What's going on, y'all? Thanks for checking in with Callie. Please subscribe if you haven't. So it looks like this is another situation where Kawhi is getting shots thrown at him. It just seems like Kawhi is like the staple of negativity coming towards his way, his direction, and he's like an easy target because he doesn't speak and he doesn't, socialize enough and speak for himself. So others feel the need to speak for him and speak about him. And really, it's unfair to him because a guy who doesn't speak, who's quiet, who stays to himself and tries to, to be the best teammate he could be for the team that he's on and try to help his team win, he gets all this criticism when he's won 2 championships in this league, which is more than most players that you can think of. And he's been at the top of his game for years. Last year, he was at the top of his game during the regular season before he got hurt. And, he's been a defensive player of the year multiple times, all NBA. He's a top 75 player. I mean, his defense is probably the best defense when he was in his prime, especially. His defense was the best defense I had ever seen from any player stepping on the floor. I'm talking all the way back to Michael Jordan days, even when I was young and I wasn't really, old enough to know a whole lot about basketball then. But I mean, when I saw defense, I saw guys play defense at a standard way or in a standard way, but not the way that Kawhi does. Kawhi just has a natural gift of great instincts along with his ability of being in the right place at the right time. And, his big hands and, long, reach definitely gives him an advantage when he's going against, another player who he's guarding. And he's been at the top of his game for a long time. And he's definitely a top 3, top 5 player when healthy. And I don't really think it's debatable. But I mean, you got, guys like Big O, Oscar Robertson saying that, if you make $50 million a year, you should be playing a lot more. And don't get me wrong, Oscar Robertson is definitely an NBA legend. He's definitely a Hall of Fame player, top 75 player too, I believe. And he definitely deserves his flowers. But I just don't think that he should be, coming out saying things like this because of the $50 million a year. We know who that's directed towards. And then he says, load management is not an option if you're making $50 million a year. Well, we know who the king of load management is. Honestly, it's really Greg Popovich. But I mean, we give it to Kawhi because he's playing basketball and Greg Popovich can't play basketball. He can only coach. But I mean, Kawhi definitely learned it from the San Antonio way. So people really should blame the San Antonio way and Greg Popovich a lot more than Kawhi Leonard because, before Kawhi adopted that system that he was in, he was all about playing and everything like that. But Greg Popovich is the one who implemented that type system, and that's what he's used to. And it's really actually a winning formula, especially if you have the right star players and the right role players around you, and you can win multiple championships as Greg Popovich displayed with the big 3 and Tony, Timmy, and Ginobili. And then they added Kawhi Leonard later on when he got drafted and came to the Spurs and won a championship in the later days of the big 3 on the Spurs. So, I mean, it's effective, but at the same time, it's definitely questionable amongst a lot of people. The one thing I will say Oscar Robertson makes a great point on, the fans pay their hard-earned money to come see these players play, and you have to make it your obligation to go out there and play, if you're making that type money because, the fans are what keep you alive. The fans are what keep you going. They keep your name buzzing. They keep your stock going, and they keep, your name, at a buzz when there might be times where you might not be playing up to the level that people expect you to. The fans are the ones that can keep your name alive, whether it's negativity or positivity. So, I mean, and then on top of that, spending their hard-earned money to come to games to try to, see you play and things like that. I definitely get it. I'm not against that at all. I just think that the principle of the situation is you're discrediting a player who has never said anything about you, who has never done anything except play when he's available. And of course, a lot of people take the load management thing out of proportion. And I feel like Oscar Robertson, the way he's coming off as in like he thinks that Kawhi is, just taking games off just because, kind of like the same way Stephen A. Smith comes off. But people have to realize Kawhi has noted documented injuries, knee problems. He's had that. He's had calf, quad issues, things like that. He's had, injuries. I mean, people make it seem like Kawhi is just taking games off because, he wants to go out and party and maybe just have a get together with his family and don't want to play basketball. I mean, if you think that about Kawhi, you could think that about a lot of players. I mean, I've seen a lot of players load manage. I mean, ever since the San Antonio Spurs came up with that system, sort of say, a lot of teams have adopted it and a lot of players have adopted it. I mean, even LeBron James, at times have load managed when he was on the Miami Heat, but it never gets talked about. And other players have load managed, what I'm saying? I guess because Kawhi does it more or needs to do it more because of his health issues, they seem to always throw jabs at him and throw shots at Kawhi Leonard. And it's really not fair because Kawhi is the type of guy where, he's definitely, I feel like he's the type of player where he wants to be out there. He wants to play. And people are throwing shade at this man for no reason. And they don't really have a legitimate reason for throwing shade at him because they don't know his situation, because Kawhi doesn't know them or doesn't give a damn about Oscar Robertson or LeBron or anybody else. They're just, guys to him, what I'm saying? But at the same time, I'm pretty sure it gets frustrating for Kawhi to hear these things over and over and over when he doesn't even speak for himself. What I'm saying? He's not a outlandish talker and boastful type guy, flashy type guy. He's not none of those things. What I'm saying? You would think people would be saying things like this about a player who's more outlandish, who's more outspoken or something like that and things of that nature. But Kawhi is the complete opposite. So, I mean, honestly, I just think people need to leave Kawhi alone, even though Oscar Robertson does, make a point. It's good to have your superstar out there if he's making $50 million to please the fans. But at the same time, if he's hurt and if he can't play, if he can't perform to the level that he needs to, then what's the point of him being out there? I mean, even though when Oscar Robertson makes this statement, he doesn't realize in the playoffs this past season, Kawhi went out there 2 games in the playoffs this past season, and we saw what he looked like. He looked like a shell of himself. He didn't look like anything of the Kawhi that we expect going into the playoffs. So, I mean, based upon Oscar Robertson's point, if you want him to just be out there to be out there and he's not right, he's still not going to produce. He's still not going to play at the high level that you expect him to. The 2 games we saw him in the playoffs, how did he play? He averaged like 14 points a game and or less, and he just didn't look like himself. He couldn't move. The mobility wasn't there. Everything wasn't there. So it's like, even if you put a player out there and they're hurt, they're not going to contribute. They're just going to be a decoy out there, and it's not really going to work out. So, I mean, even though Oscar Robertson makes a point about, people paying their hard-earned money and things like that, and players making all this money, I feel like it's a little bit of jealousy because players make $50 million, or players have the ability to make $50+ million a year, and Oscar Robertson wasn't awarded that back in his day. And, I feel like it's just jealousy based upon that, along with the fact that maybe Kawhi, he think, maybe it's jealousy because Kawhi is a better player and played a lot less games. It could be, because honestly, I personally think that. I think most people, or a lot of people, would take Kawhi over Oscar Robertson as far as a player. You know what I'm saying? Even though Oscar Robertson averaged a triple-double and all those things, but that was like in the 50s, 60s. Nobody was really alive then. I mean, there were people alive then. I'm not going to say it wasn't, but what I'm saying is nobody in the modern era really remembers any of that stuff. You know what I'm saying? Kawhi is more relevant, so he's more talked about, and he's more, of course, he's in this era that we're in. So, I mean, honestly, it could be a little bit of jealousy, and it could just be, he makes a good point, and he does make a good point. You want to see your players out there, but I agree with that part, but I don't agree with having a player out there if he's not right, because he's not going to contribute. If he's not right, he's not going to play to his capability. And he's not playing his capabilities, then you're not going to win. So you might as well not put him out there if you're going to lose anyway, just like the Clippers did against Dallas in the 7-game series. Even though Kawhi played 2 games, they lost those 2 games because Kawhi wasn't in rhythm, and he wasn't in rhythm with the team, and he wasn't in rhythm with himself in regards to what he does best. So I understand where Oscar Robertson's coming from, but at the same time, you got to understand Kawhi's situation. The man's hurt. He's been hurt, and injuries derail you from being the player that you need to be in the moments you need to be. So you got to get well and healthy before you can go out there and execute.